Maine. When she says somewhere horrible, she means Maine. That's ABC's Once Upon a Time. The show is about a bunch of trapped fairy tale creatures who live in the town of Storybrooke, Maine. Storybook. Get it? It was marketed as a show from the writers of Lost. It circles around a woman named Emma Swan, played by Jennifer Morrison, who we all know from her role in the show House. Emma Swan lived her life as a bounty hunter until on her 28th birthday, the boy she'd given up for adoption shows up at her doorstep and tells her she is destined to save all the trapped fairy tale creatures. Emma's biological son Henry, who is played by Jared Gilmore, was adopted by the town mayor, Regina Mills, played by Lana Farrell. Emma doesn't really believe that the town is cursed, but she takes Henry home and ends up living with his teacher, Mary Margaret, played by Jennifer Goodwin. Another main character is Mr. Gold, played by Robert Carlyle.
What's that? Mr. Gold. He owns this place. The inn? No. The town.
Because Once Upon a Time was written by a few of the same people who worked on Lost, the two shows have very similar setups, in that there are flashes backwards and forwards in time. The backwards scenes take place in the fairy tale world before the characters were cursed by the Evil Queen. The Evil Queen was jealous of the other characters having their happily ever after, especially Snow White. So she cursed them to our world, wiped their memories, trapped them in Storybrooke, and froze them in time. In an episode, these flashes backwards and forwards usually follow one character. We see their fairy tale stories while it parallels what is happening in the real world. For example, in the episode Snowfalls, the backward flashes show when Snow White fell in love with Prince Charming, while in the present, Mary Margaret meets David. So all the characters in the fairy tale world are also in Storybrooke. Mary Margaret is Snow White, Mr. Gold is Rumpelstiltskin, Ruby is Little Red Riding Hood, the mayor is the Evil Queen. There are only two people who are exclusively in the real world: Emma, who is the daughter of Snow White and Prince Charming, and Henry. Henry was given a book with all the stories, and he figured out what happened and who a few of the characters in Storybrooke are.
Because it doesn't know
that he's a fairy tale character.
None of them do. They don't remember who they are.
Most of the violence in this show happens in the fairy tale world. Prince Charming fights bad guys with a sword, and there's some archery too. Other than that, there's not much violence, and the drama comes from the tension between the character interactions and situational drama. As far as sexual elements go in the show, there's not really that much to talk about. Once Upon a Time is a really PG show. The romantic elements come from Princess storylines: Snow White, Cinderella, and Belle. The romances usually circle around true love's kiss. Nothing really risque happens apart from that. While the focus of the episodes change, the main protagonist is Emma Swan, and the main antagonist is Mayor Regina Mills. Regina is a wealthy woman who lives in an enormous house, while Emma has to rent an apartment with a roommate. But they're both young, in their late 20s or early 30s, and they both love Henry. But Regina's love is more of a selfish love, and Emma's is not. Regina doesn't like Emma being in Storybrooke because she doesn't want Emma and Henry to bond, and she doesn't want the curse broken because she's evil. Emma doesn't really believe in the curse, but she does her best to help people, and soon she becomes the town sheriff. And things start to get better. The show is more on the dramatic side, so there's not really that much comedy in it, but I think that the funniest character would have to be Rumpelstiltskin or Mr. Gold. In the real world, he's like a sleazy business owner, so he has a lot of power in the town. And in the fantasy world, he has a lot of magical power, so he can be cocky and silly. And there's always humor in characters like that, even if at times he can be kind of creepy.
Victorious at last!
The character who has the most ethical actions in the show is Emma. Because she's the sheriff, Emma tries to stay in the legal range. She does break into the mayor's house during that episode, but other than that, her actions stay pretty clean, which is better than many of the other characters. I think that Robert Carlyle has the best performance in the show because he plays his two characters so well. In the real world, he's Mr. Gold, and in the fantasy world, he's Rumpelstiltskin. The different portrayals are amazing. Mr. Gold's movements are kind of stiff, and he walks with a cane, while Rumpelstiltskin is very energetic and acts sort of silly sometimes, which is great because he's so powerful and everyone's afraid of him. The fact that he can pull out these two very different characters but still be able to connect them with believable mannerisms makes him the person with the best performance. I think the strongest plot point in the show would be the romance between Snow White and Prince Charming, and Mary Margaret and David. Jennifer Goodwin and Josh Dallas have great chemistry. I think the theme of this show is good versus evil. I mean, it's a show about fairy tales come to life, so there are other things that come into play a lot, like love conquering all and Disney happy endings. But most of the time it's good versus evil. The show's demographic seems to be in the ages 18 to 49. At least that's where most of the views from the pilot came from, and I couldn't really find any more information about current ratings. This show doesn't really have a wide demographic of actors in it. Most people in the town are young and white, and the show mostly focuses on them. Though there are a few older people and children who are in the story, like Hansel and Gretel are children, and Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother is older. I'm not sure what to base this narrow range of actors on. It could be the fact that fairy tales and fantasy stories have very few minorities or children or elderly people in them, so this is reflected in the show. At least that's the best explanation I can think of. I think that some of the plot elements in the show are reflected in real life. Deception, love, truth, and lies. People experience all of those things, they just do it without magic. I like the show and I'm able to connect with the characters. I get angry when characters do evil or stupid things, and I'm always rooting for the hero to win. My friends and I grew up loving Disney, and I really enjoy seeing these fairy tales come to life. I'm able to watch the show and feel nostalgic even though it's a new show. The show is very beautiful, and in the real world people have the beautiful main landscape with woods and water and small town charm, even though I actually think they film it somewhere in Vancouver. In the magical world they use CGI to fill in the surroundings. There are a lot of color and it gives it a good fantasy feeling to it. However, the CGI is kind of sad. There's an episode with a CGI deer, and I personally was not able to suspend my disbelief at all and think it was a real animal. It wasn't real and I didn't believe it was real for a second. But I think the thing this show does best is the plot. Some of the writing seems cheesy, but the plot keeps introducing new and intriguing points, and there's more questions that are being introduced. I think this can be a good thing because it keeps people interested, but it can also be a bad thing because Lost had a lot of unanswered questions for the longest time, and it made a lot of people, me, mad. As long as everything is wrapped up, everything will be fine. I think the moral of this show is good people win, and if you do bad things, then bad things will happen to you.
You're going to lose. I know that now.
I'm okay with the way they pull this message off because of the fairy tale thing, so it fits with that territory. So there you have it. My take on ABC's Once Upon a Time. It's on Sunday at 8/7 Central if you're interested in seeing it.